Hello, hello, hello. Let's see if this thing's on. Is this thing on? I am here with Barry from Bear's Workshop. I have no idea how much the lag is, but I think you're all watching this now. Barry is here with me. This is Bear's Workshop. Barry is a YouTube channel, Bear's Workshop. There's a link in the description below. And am I? Uh-oh. That's not good. Hang on a second.
It looks like you're on.
I'm hearing myself.
Oh, echo's not good.
You don't hear it, do you?
I don't hear, but I've got mute on while I'm watching the video. Here. I don't hear the echo on the screen, but I'm not the best person to ask.
All right. All right, let's just move on. I'll manage it.
All right.
So what I want to start with is that we're going to talk about Lucid Motors in depth. They just had their Q2 earnings call. Barry has been following Lucid for a long time. I've been a bear. I'm the bear. He's Bear's Workshop, but I've been the Lucid bear for a long time. And Barry's been positive about Lucid for a long time. He may have moderated a bit. And before we get to that, we're going to talk about Nikola Motors. Barry drones both factories, and he's been covering them for a while. So Barry, before we dive into Lucid Motors, first of all, tell us about Bear's Workshop. What is Bear's Workshop, and what do you do? What do you do for fun?
I don't do anything for fun. I'm always working. But Bear's Workshop, originally we used to do stuff around the workshop, repairing things and things like that. But we moved on when Nikola started putting their factory together in Coolidge, Arizona. And that was early 21, January 21. So we decided let's do some drone flyover, see if people are interested in that. And then Lucid opened up theirs. They started their next phase. So we said, okay, let's do that. Nikola's been very receptive to us. They haven't given us anything, but they're just very friendly about it. Lucid, on the other hand, called the Gestapo on us and did not want us flying over the property. And they've been on silent mode for probably a good year. I haven't heard a peep from anybody there. So we're just trying to share what we see with investors, whether it's Nikola or Lucid. And we try to be unbiased. You know, sometimes I will lean some ways. When I see good things, I'll be like, yeah, I'll be very positive about it. But I am just trying to show investors what is actually going on and what you normally could not see.
Okay. So what's happening with Nikola Motors?
Nikola is on their third phase of construction, which is actually called phase 2. And they're expanding their factory by about another 275,000 square foot. They're moving along. I've been in the factory. I did get an invite, and I got a factory tour back in April, which was pretty cool. Met Mark Russell, the current CEO, but not for long because he's transitioning out. Everyone there was very nice. I got to see the line. Got to ride in one of the Nikola Tres, and I was very impressed. So,
all right, wait, what's a Nikola Tre? That's a semi?
Yeah, that's the semi. That is obviously going to compete with the Tesla semi at some point. The main difference between the two is the price points. And right now with the Tesla semi, it's priced way under the Nikola Tre. But we don't know where the Tesla semi is going to end up being because that price was announced quite a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my tweet today that if you go on the site to like book the truck, you're not locking in the price.
Oh, they're not locking you in?
You specifically in the agreement, you're not locking in the price.
Yeah, and I'm afraid my Cybertruck is going to end up being more than a Tesla semi was originally priced at. So hope that doesn't happen.
I think that's a little paranoid, but I think the Cybertruck might be more than 100 grand.
Yeah. Well, remember
so what does a Nikola Tre cost? Is it fully electric? What's the range?
They're about 350,000. I think that's what they're pricing them at. And then I think there's going to be a price difference between what they're selling them at and what the dealers are selling them at. unless you're buying it directly from the factory. Not entirely sure about how that's working out, because I've seen them say that the truck is priced at 350. I've seen a New York dealer saying we've got them at 425. The range is 350. The payload with the truck is going to be 40 tons or 42. So we're looking at a decent range at 350, and then they're trying to do the hydrogen, the fuel cell electric vehicle. They've had some pretty good alphas out. Sandy Monroe took a drive in the fuel cell alpha truck. He didn't even think it looked like an alpha. He thought it was a beta. So that's going to have a range of anywhere from 500 to 900 miles, depending on what exactly the final configuration is going to be.
Okay, but the tray is real. The tray exists. They're selling the tray.
Yes.
And is the sales pitch for the tray that because it's electric, it lowers the cost of operation to the owner and makes up for whatever price difference there might be between that and a diesel truck over a period of years?
Yes, that's one selling point. The other one is zero emissions. So
right.
you've got zero emissions. You've got the lower cost of ownership. You've got uptime. Their uptime is better than the diesel trucks. So there's a lot of factors. I mean, for the same reason that you'd want to buy a Tesla semi, are going to be the same reasons you're going to want to buy a Nikola Tre.
So are they getting, I just saw something about Tesla semi getting a $40,000 tax credit. Is there a tax credit for people who buy a Nikola Tre?
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be the same credit. And just like in California, in New York, they're going to have additional state incentives that are going to run anywhere from probably $100,000 to $150,000 per truck. Tesla semis are going to be free in California if they ever make them. Yeah.
So with Nikola, what's their financial position? How much cash do they have on hand? Are they making money? Are they losing money? I don't follow their financials. Where were they in their last quarter?
They came in for their earnings were better than to be expected, which was still a loss. They don't expect to be making a profit until, at least on the Nikola Tres, the BEVs, they don't expect their margin to be positive until probably sometime next year. And then on the fuel cell, probably the year after. Right now, they're running about a negative 60 to 70% margin on each vehicle that they produce. As far as cash on hand, their goal is to always keep 1 year's worth of cash on hand. So they did just dilute the stock a couple of weeks ago. And so they haven't issued any more stock, but they now have stock available to issue. So in the future, if they do need that cash, they will have that available. They've got equity lines and other areas of cash.
So they've got some money to cash available to burn. It looks like their plan, they have enough cash to make it through next year when they start making money on the Tre.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think I don't know enough about it. Mark Plott is saying, you're familiar with Mark Plott from your channel. He says he's not a fan of the fuel cell, but he says the BEV, the battery electric Tre, is okay. It's expensive and it only has 300 miles of range. I think you're saying it has more like 350.
It has 350.
Okay. So, and you agree it's expensive.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But if I understand things correctly, if you run it 10 years, you more than make your money back.
Oh yeah.
The difference, maybe even in 5 years or less.
Yeah.
You make your money back compared to a diesel.
And I'm all for competition. So I've got no problems with the Tesla semi. If there was a Tesla semi factory around the corner from my house, I'd be doing drone footage over that too. I don't try to be in anyone's corner that I'm madly in love with Nikola Tres and they're going to be better than the Tesla semis. I think Tesla semis are going to be fantastic also. Every video I've seen, hey, it looks great. When we actually get the semis out from Tesla, people can do a more hands-on comparison and see what the pros and cons are going to be. Right now, the big thing for me is what are the Tesla semis really going to be priced at?
Well, I don't think it matters so much how the Nikola Tre competes against the Tesla semi. What matters is how they each compete against diesel semis, because currently the market is basically 100% diesel semis.
Yes.
So if Tesla comes out with the Tesla semi, they're not trying to displace the Nikola Tre. They're trying to displace the much larger market of diesel semis. And Nikola Tre is not trying to defeat the Tesla semi. They're trying to take sales from all the diesel semis. So I feel the same way about electric vehicles. Like, I'm not angry at Rivian for coming out with the R1T. It's like, let's work together and displace all these gas and diesel pickup trucks. Let's Model Y and Mach-E compete together, get rid of the gasoline SUVs. We don't have it until we get to EVs having like more than 50% of the market. We don't really need to fight with each other. We got internal combustion engine vehicles to knock out.
Right, and I agree. I agree with that, but I'm also still for competition because that will only improve it. But right now, the competition, like you said, are the diesel trucks. They need to be better than the diesel trucks. But I think there's room in the market for all sorts of different BEV semis. So,
all right. So Pergraph says, isn't the Tre just a rebadged Iveco truck? Is there any Nikola tech in it? So I don't know that history. I know there's some history with Nikola doing some other stuff that seemed fraudulent with the previous CEO, Trevor Milton.
Yes.
My impression is he's long gone. Some adults have come into the room and they're managing the company in a better way. Is the Nikola Tre just an evolution of, or a copy of some other truck, with presumably licensed?
Yeah, it is. And there was no reason to rebuild and design an entire new cab and a new frame and do all, just like with Tesla with the Roadster. It was originally Lotus. You've got to start somewhere. So at this point in their game, it was let's take something that has a cab. We're going to customize it. We're going to change some things. But why go through certifying new cabs, new frames, and doing all the things that you would need to do? It makes it too expensive to actually get off the ground. So by doing what they're doing, it works. Tesla did the same thing. It worked great for them. Look where they are right now.
Yeah. Okay. So but regardless, are they building the trucks themselves, or is somebody building them for them?
The cabs come in like a half assembled state, and they have an assembly line for the cabs where they have to assemble seats, seat belts, the dash. All the parts aren't there. The base frame is, we see them parked outside. They store them outside there. As of yesterday, there's some 128 cabs that were sitting in the waiting area, and then they go onto the assembly line, they get assembled, and then they join the rest of the line to complete the assembly of the truck.
Okay. All right. So we covered Nikola. I think that's enough for me.
Okay.
What I'm really excited about, not necessarily in a positive way, is Lucid Motors had their Q2 earnings call. For those who don't know, Bear covers Lucid extensively, and he did a live stream of their earnings call. And I didn't listen to the earnings call directly. I actually watched Bear's live stream of it. I watched what you said before, I watched during, and I watched some of your comments after. I used Bear's, I ripped Bear's video from YouTube using whatever tools and used clips from that to tell my story about what I saw in the Q2 earnings call, which is one of my most recent videos on my channel, just I think it was yesterday. And I wanted to get a sense from you. So for me, I first became more fully aware of Lucid. I think I was aware of Lucid somewhat before, but I became much more fully aware of them September of 2020 when they had their reveal. And that's when I did my first video. I became an immediate critic of Lucid Motors. I just didn't buy the story. And somewhere along the way, you became aware of Lucid and you bought the story. So when did you first become aware of Lucid, and what sold you on Lucid?
Well, nothing has sold me. I try to stay as moderate as I can on this. If I was going to be super critical of them, I probably would have said a lot more over time. I was going to do a video on the BS contract that they sent me in order for me to fly over. And
I remember when they tried to stop you from droning.
Yeah. So they had sent me this contract, and this is where I got my first bad taste in my mouth of them. I think the car itself, in the beginning, oh, that car is cool looking. That looks really great. If they can make it with these numbers, that's going to be great. I know in our last conversation, which was like over a year ago, you were betting me that they won't make 100 cars in the fourth quarter. They did, but but yeah, barely. I really thought that they were going to do better. That was quarter four was disappointing. Quarter one was disappointing. Quarter two was disappointing. But the contract that they sent me kind of showed me true colors, and it just looked like a big corporation filled with politics where they're afraid of every little thing, where you just have such a different culture in Tesla. where was it? I think it was Joe or Jeff. I don't remember which one of them got the cease and desist letter from the security at Tesla telling them you can't fly over here anymore. And within 24 hours, they used Twitter to get Elon Musk to go, you can fly over.
Yeah.
And it was taken care of. With Lucid, they just sent lawyers after me with a cease and desist. And then we started to work things out, and they sent me a contract, and the contract pretty much said, we're going to give you permission, but you have to follow these 46 rules in order to fly. And if you violate any one of them, you're going to violate the contract. But the big part was that you have to notify us before you fly on every single flight with the exact date and time. And if we don't respond to your email of you telling us, then you can't fly. And so all they had to do was, if I signed it, was just ignore me. And then I legally could not fly. Legally, I could fly over the property right now, but I go to court. I don't want to spend the money. Maybe I'd hire you. Maybe that would work out. That's an idea. We should talk about that.
I'm not a lawyer anymore. I retired as a lawyer.
Okay, well, I'll represent myself, and I'll have an earpiece with you.
I can consult with you.
I'm not getting involved in it because I don't want to waste my time. So we don't fly over, we fly around, and we don't get the greatest views. Sometimes they have security stalk us, but it gave me an insight onto the corporate management there. And I know you've had a lot to say about that in the past. And I was just like, well, you guys, how about some grassroots movement here for your company? I mean, there are some, but it's not like Tesla right now. Maybe there will be in 5 years or 10 years if they're still around. So that remains to be seen.
Well, they're using the property to bury Khashoggi's body, so they don't want you to catch that by mistake on the drone flights. That's the problem. They're burying it one piece at a time. Thank you, Ralph. That's very kind of you, Ralph. I really appreciate your support. All right, so you mentioned the car, and I agree with you. The car always looked good. Some people were very critical. Oh, it looks like a Honda Civic or whatever. Maybe that's the EQS that people pick on for looking like a Civic. I actually thought the car looked okay. When I saw the September reveal, I mean, and let's face it, I know people have driven the car. I saw one in the wild. It looks like a good car. Now, I think they spend about $2 million building each car, and they deliver them for 150,000, so 180,000. So, if you get a $2 million car for 180,000, you ought to be satisfied with it. They're hand building them basically, but there were just a lot of claims. So, I think we can agree that if they could produce this car at scale at a reasonable cost, it would be a good thing.
Yes, I've driven the car. I do have an opinion on the car because I have driven it now. One of my viewers hooked me up with a rental. We rented it, or he rented it, and I drove it. And I did a video on it. So if anyone wants to see that, just take a look at my channel. I thought it was really good. I was more impressed than I thought I was going to be. I do have certain issues with the car, but I got certain issues with every car. And everybody does. If you're going to nitpick, you're going to find things wrong with it. But my big issue with that car is the ingress and the egress, getting in and out of that car. That A-pillar is something, there's just something wrong with it. And it's
for those people who don't know, the A-pillar is when you're stepping, it's at the driver's door. It's the front side of the driver's door. The side of the driver's door that's closest to, or the side of the driver's door frame closest to the front of the vehicle.
Yeah, it's too low, and maybe I didn't work with it long enough. Maybe I didn't have the seat in the right place, but there was something I had to do with my head and I am tall. I am 6'4", so this is not going to apply to everyone. But I remember when I got into it in the studio a year and a half ago, whatever it was. I thought the same thing. I was like, this is a little awkward to get into. But when I got back into it again, it was like, all right, this is still the same way. So I don't know. Maybe that's something that I just need to work out. But it just seems really.
I feel that way about the Model S. Actually, I stayed with a friend who had a Model S when I was in Austin, and I had my Model X with me, which I don't have any issues. I have other issues with, but not that. But I remember getting in the Model S and kind of had to wedge your way in to get in the car, because I'm not 6'4", but I'm 6 foot, and it was a bit of an effort to get into the car. It's just the low sleek. It's the low sleek sedan,
Yeah. Well, I have a Model S. I don't I don't find I have any issues. So I can directly compare the two and say, I get in the Model S without a problem. The Lucid Air was what's going on here. So
Yeah.
that, as far as the car goes, that was my biggest complaint. But the pickup in the car, the speed, everything was real good, very responsive. The mapping was still a little bit slow, and they need to work on the infotainment and getting that sped up just a little bit. I don't know if it's software or the chips that they're using, but that needs improvement.
Okay. So we had the Q2 investor call, and just a little bit of history here. I've been criticizing Lucid for, well, initially I was just criticizing them outright. And then as we got closer to them delivering cars, I was questioning whether they could deliver cars at all. I think we could say I got it wrong when I said they wouldn't deliver cars, or they wouldn't deliver 100 cars by the end of the year last year. And they did squeak out 100 cars, at least arguably by the end of the year last year. And I think you have to concede that, but they're clearly having problems manufacturing at volume. They're clearly having problems manufacturing, getting their manufacturing volumes down, volume up and cost down. And the Q2 call, I have my videos on it. What's your take on the Q2 investor call? What did you learn from it?
I learned that they're going through their own version of production hell, which they said they weren't going to because they were better than that. So they're eating their words, which is unfortunate. I think I got a lot of sense of, we're not going to tell you what's going on. And that was really bothersome. I'm hearing about how they did on the racetrack and how the cars got 1,050 horsepower. I already think the car is a great car. Okay. I don't need to hear that. I don't need to hear that type of hype right now. I need to hear what the problems are, which problems they had and resolved. Make me feel better about that. Which problems that they're still working on. They're just very vague on their answers, and that really bothered me. The questions that were asked that you went over in your video regarding reservations, regarding that the $1.5 billion that was put into an investment fund.
Yes. 1.4 billion. There's two different investments. There's short-term and long-term.
Yeah.
We know two categories, short-term and long-term, and I think it adds up to 1.4 billion.
Yeah. So not answering those questions, very bothersome. And you talked about, and I talked about on when I was listening to the earnings call, that Peter is just smooth. He's very smooth. And then when it came to the one-on-one questions, hemming and hawing was the word you used, and that's perfect word. He's I mean, this is something you should know the answer to. It's very basic. When your numbers are that low, you should know what they are, and you should be able to be exact. And so that was disappointing to see numbers not answered. The fact that they told, well, we produced in the first half of 1,405 cars. Okay, wait a minute, you produced 700 cars in the first quarter, so you've only gotten 700 out this quarter. Why couldn't you just say that? It just reeks of we're hiding stuff, and we just don't want to outright say it. And I don't know why, because we can do the math, and we're going to say it. 700 cars produced, and I think 300 to 400 of those cars are sitting in the parking lot. I want to see those cars get delivered. I made a big mistake on quarter one. I thought that there was going to be a lot more, quarter four. I thought there was going to be a lot more cars delivered. It turned out that they were just bringing the cars back in to add parts. I'm about 95% sure that a lot of the cars that they have in their waiting area are not complete. The ones I think, and this is an assumption, the cars that they're covering are complete now, but they have a lot of cars. They used to cover them all. Now they're only covering certain ones, and then they're putting them in a different area. So I tend to think those cars are complete. I have no idea why they're sitting there. Then they've got other cars which we've been able to verify that there's been trim pieces missing, and we can see it from the air. We thought maybe it was a new model, maybe this is a new design, but then in the days going ahead, we see that these cars now have those trim pieces, so they're having issues. Tell us what they are. I'm a forgiving person. I know Tesla had problems with the Model 3, getting that out. It's going to happen, but be more honest about it. and be more open, people are going to be a lot more understanding, and people like you are going to be less likely to say fraud if they're going to be honest. But when you start hiding stuff, you look more fraudulent. I'm not calling them fraud. I don't think that they're a fraud. I think that they're trying to cover their mistakes incorrectly. And I think honesty is going to be best on this, as opposed to trying to hide it, because you just look bad when you're trying to hide it.
Yeah,
they're hiding it.
Just to be clear with the audience on this, there's this moment that I highlighted in my video where, and there's a couple moments like this, but an analyst asked, what's your weekly production rate at the end of Q2, and what's your weekly production rate now? And Peter said, he hemmed and hawed, and ultimately said it would be misleading to tell you that, because apparently facts are misleading.
I kind of know the answer.
Oh yeah?
It's not a number. That's the thing, because
Is it zero?
No, it's not zero, because there are cars coming out. Over an average, there's a number, but they're going to have weeks where they're not producing cars.
Right. Well, I mean, they said that. They said they shut down for 2.5 weeks to upgrade something.
Yeah, but you've got to be able to stop and look at your line and go, if we're having quality issues and it's on the line and it's our guys doing it, let's get to it and fix the problem. If it's a quality issue with a supplier, you need to get a new supplier. You need to solve the problem. There's just too many cars sitting there covered up, which is also an issue, because if those cars are actually complete, they need to be shipped out. They cannot be having logistics problems with shipping. That cannot be the problem. But we see cars that are covered, look like they're ready to go, and they're just sitting there. Monday, we did a flyover, and half of that lot was cars that were covered and looked like they were ready to go. Wednesday, we came by, 80% of those cars were gone. And I flat out asked the question, where did those cars go? Because in order for that, they would have had to have 20 or 30 car carriers come by to actually ship them out. And we see them sitting there for so long, they're not going to just show up in 48-hour period when they haven't been showing up for a month. So did they move them to another site? I don't know. I would love to say that they were delivered. I did hear from people that before we saw that the cars were suddenly missing, that there have been reports of cars getting delivered more frequently.
Well, I mean, one of my theories about that is that they knew Q2 was going to be bad. This is if you're going to try to manage expectations, if you know Q2 is going to be bad, make it worse, take the big hit, and then deliver a bunch of cars in Q3. Mm-hmm. And now you're able to say how much bigger Q3 was than Q2 because you held back some of your production in Q2 for delivery in Q3. It's game playing, but I'm not saying they did it. I'm just saying I could almost see them like waiting till your drone was gone and say, all right, bring in the trucks. Let's get them out while Bear's not looking.
Yeah. They kind of do know when I fly, but I don't think they're really doing things based on what I'm doing. I was
kidding.
That. Yeah, no, it's been brought up before. Like, do you think that they're moving cars because you're coming by every other day? It's like, I hope not, because I'm not that important. I got a bit of news for you. This is breaking on your channel. Lucid sent out an email, it looks like, to all of their reservation holders, or a bunch of their reservation holders yesterday. And I saw someone on Twitter that I know, one of my viewers, and he said that his Air Pure was confirmed. And I was like, okay. It's not so, they're saying Q4, never going to happen, but more than likely you'll get it in 2023, which was an odd way to phrase it. The car is going to be produced. We're going to start producing the Air Pures in the Q4.
Yeah.
But you more than likely you won't get it till 2023, not Q1, not Q2, just 2023. But that's not the big part of it. The big part of it was I got a Lucid Air on order. I have a Pure on order. Okay. And I got an email also. And I'm like, well, let me look into this. So I look into what's this with confirming my order. Well, they said it's regarding the tax rebates, and you've got to have a contract. So in order to do this, they want to solidify your order by making your deposit non-refundable.
No.
Yeah, I haven't made a decision yet. I probably am. The Pure's deposit was only $300, but I have a Mach-E on order. I did not get an email from them saying, in order to keep your incentive. I didn't get anything from from any. I've got 8 EVs on order right now for my business.
Sure.
So I didn't get any emails from anybody else, but I heard Rivian sent out a similar one, but their $1,000 deposit, only $100 was not refundable. But so I was a little taken back by that. You want to make this non-refundable, you want me to lock in. So it is possible that we could see a reduction in reservations for the third quarter because they're demanding people lock in.
Oh, people might cancel because they're not willing to make it non-refundable.
Yeah.
Although $300, I mean, I don't think I would care about $300.
Yeah, I'm probably going to do it. It just left a bad taste in my mouth that they would do that in the first place. So it's not necessary. Lucid's doing things that, in my opinion, as an investor, as a potential car buyer, as someone who's got an interest in EVs or cars, things that I wouldn't do. They're spending just too much time gloating about how great the car is and just not talking to us about what's going on. So,
yeah, I mean, it's just so we kind of touched on this, but just to be clear with people, Lucid announced that they produced 1,405 cars in the first quarter. And when you add up their numbers, they delivered about 1,060 cars at the first half of the year. Sorry, in the first half of the year, they produced 1,405 cars and they delivered in total about 1,060 cars, if I have the number right. So it left about 350 cars that were produced and not delivered. There was another group of cars, if I heard it right, that were produced but didn't meet quality standards and had to be remodeled, modified or whatever. But I was left hanging with how do you have 350 cars that you produced and you didn't deliver when you supposedly have overwhelming demand? So, one theory is the cars that were produced and ready for delivery weren't really ready for delivery. Another theory is they didn't have the logistics to deliver them. And a third theory is they don't really have the demand they said they had, that people are deciding not to take delivery of their vehicles, which happens with Tesla, by the way. Somebody will get contacted from Tesla saying, hey, we're ready to deliver your vehicle. You've waited this long and it's not the right time for you now. And you say, hey, can I put it off 3 months? That does happen.
yes.
But to have it happen with 300 cars out of 1,000 seems like 350 cars out of 1,000 that you delivered seems like a lot. And then there's this other question that wasn't answered, that was asked and not answered. Lawyer talk, asked and answered, asked and not answered. That they had some significant number of cars that they produced but didn't meet quality, that were not factory gated and needed to be reworked to be able to deliver to customers. And it was a direct question, how many of those were not factory gated and how many have been factory gated since or whatever. And Peter wouldn't put numbers on that either. And it's just, it's striking that you would admit this problem and then not quantify the problem. Like, just be straight with us.
Yeah.
Tell us how bad the problem is. When you don't tell us, my gut reaction is when you don't tell me the answer, that means it's probably worse than I thought. Right.
It's worse than you thought. And the reason they don't want to put a number on it is because they may not be, if they actually told the real number, the numbers won't add up and they don't want to be caught in a lie.
Yes, that's, you start getting into SEC, going after you for lying in public statements. There's all kinds of potential problems there. So going forward, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me about the call, you get into these questions they didn't answer, but in the introduction, Peter, you noticed this as well. When Peter is speaking at the beginning, I think you even said it sounded like he was pre-recorded. I don't think he was pre-recorded, but he was very smooth at the beginning when he's going through his prepared remarks. When he got to answering questions later, he bumbled a lot. But when he was doing his prepared remarks, there's this moment where he talked about supply chain and logistics. And he made this comment that, like all the other companies, we've been experiencing supply chain and logistics problems. Like, wait a minute. I agree all the other companies are having supply chain problems. This is the first time I've heard of a company admitting they have logistics problems. So he described logistics problems. There was some depth on the logistics problems and there were some questions. And I think we got some more out of that logistics issue. But what was your take on what you heard about logistics?
It was vague. He wasn't completely clear whether it was incoming logistics or outgoing logistics, whether it was the shipping of the vehicles or the parts coming in.
Well, his example was getting the right parts to the right spot in the line at the right time.
That
He did say that.
that is 101 on a production line for a car manufacturing. So I can't understand why he was saying that they're going to bring it in house. It should have been in house. It should have been something that they had been doing since day one.
Yeah.
I mean, I've watched all the videos on how they make cars and stuff like that, and it's supposed to be right at the moment that you need it. Though I've been told by some people in the industry that with the supply chain issues, if you can get a part, you get a part, and if it has to sit there for a month, it has to sit there for a month. But you get them when you can get them right now, and you worry about I forget what it's called, just in time, I think it is.
Yeah, just in time manufacturing.
Yeah, just you don't worry about the just in time right now. If you're trying to ramp up and develop a production line, just in time is not something that you're going to figure out on your first 100 cars. You get in every supply and every part that you possibly can, and you figure that out later, and that's how you streamline it. That's how you ramp up your production.
Have you been to Giga Texas?
I've been on the outside. I couldn't get in.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So I've driven around Giga Texas. I actually walked around parts of Giga Texas, like not just close, but like around the vicinity. And I noticed what I would describe as staging areas. Like for those who don't know, Giga Texas is ridiculously big. It's almost a mile long. It's like a quarter mile wide. It's this monstrously huge factory. But there's a lot of land around it. And I noticed like multiple areas where it seemed like I would call it staging, where they had stuff that wasn't ready to go in the factory yet, whether it's building out the factory or supplies for the production or whatever. There's one on I think that's the east side of the factory, like close to where the parking is. There's an area where they have a whole bunch of stuff. There's one on the other side of that. There's a really big one on the other side of the highway where I think they have a whole bunch of stuff stored. There's another spot that's northwest of the factory that I saw and maybe even northeast of the factory. There might be like 4 or more spots where they just stage materials. You know, you got stuff coming in, you don't have a spot for it yet. Put it in the staging area. We'll get to it later.
Yeah.
And that seems to me, and I don't think there's no staging areas around the Lucid factory or probably the Nikola factory either.
Nikola, I don't think is needing as much space. There's so much going on at the Lucid site. They started staging stuff in the waiting area for the cars. Where they took a section of the car production area and they fenced it off, and they were storing parts in there, which is surprising to me because they do have other areas for the construction staging. They have a lot of areas for the construction where they're staging that stuff. I don't know if they're actually running out of space. Did I just lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay, I just had something go up. I lost it on the screen here. Hold on. All right, there we go. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing with the staging. They've got the 2 buildings which that are complete that look incredibly small compared to what they're building now. But we don't see much in the way of staging except in the car waiting area, which seems to be out of the. It just seems to be in an awfully strange place. And they also put up a tent in that same area. And I don't know if you've seen any of the flyover videos.
Not recently.
Okay, so you've got this area where they put the cars after they produce. They've got one section where they're covered cars and one section that they're not covered, which we're assuming are unfinished cars or missing something, quality, maybe a part. They took a third of that or a quarter of that, and they put this tent, like a Tesla style tent or a SpaceX style tent, and they've got massive air conditioners on it, so it's climate controlled. And right in the middle of that parking lot, what is the purpose of this? Again, we can't figure it out. Nobody at Lucid will ever talk to me again. I think they've been threatened with death or castration or something. So
they get an invite to a Saudi consulate if they talk to you.
Yes, it's exactly. I used to get tidbits of information even from the construction guys, and then one day it just dried up. Nobody will speak. Yeah. So
Patrick Rawls in the chat says that if you want to look for more cars, go to 1108 West Gila Bend Highway, Casa Grande. Thank you, Lucid Air, for your support.
Yeah, Lucid
Air, he's a bull.
Yeah, Lucid Air is definitely a bull. He's one of my Patreons, but he's helped me out.
Oh, thank you for the support, Lucid Air.
Okay, and Patrick just retracted that message. Lucid owns a couple different sites around Casa Grande over there, and they're buying more land. And as we speak, they're
Right.
constant. They're buying a lot more land around that factory, which is already very large to begin with. But they're just acquiring more land for future projects.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing about the logistics that struck me, and I think you watched my video, you saw me talk about this, but I just want to get your take on it, was the way Peter described it. And this relates to the next thing I wanted to ask you about was there's these executive moves. They're bringing in this guy, Stephen David. There are like 2 or 3 other people they're bringing in for logistics and supply chain. And they mentioned a logistics center that's going to be in the factory that was several hundred square feet, which seemed awfully small to me, but whatever. And at one point I heard Peter say that something was going to happen in 2 months. And I was thinking, we're in the middle of Q3 now. 2 months is into Q4. You're not going to have your logistics problem solved until sometime in Q4. Did I hear that? And it was even like when he mentioned Stephen David, he will be based in the Casa Grande factory. He will report to me. These other people will report to him. It sounded like we know we have logistics problems. We have identified some of them at least, and we're starting to take steps, which means you haven't fixed your logistics problems yet. And the people you're bringing in to take charge haven't started yet. So it's going to be at least a month and maybe into Q4 before you make meaningful progress on your logistics problems. Am I hearing that wrong?
No, you're not hearing it wrong. And it's a little confusing and baffling why this problem hasn't been identified a while ago. Because from what, it's quite obvious in Q4 of last year, if you can only make 100 and so cars, that there's a problem. Yeah. The problem needs to be addressed right away, and whatever these bottlenecks are need to be tackled, and they need to be shared with the people that care, just to keep you going.
Yeah. Well, I'll be fair to Peter on this because I don't believe much of what Peter says, but it made sense to me that we were constrained by the supply chain initially. And then as the supply chain started getting better, then we realized we had logistics problems. Now, I don't find it a good sign that you were right, but I find it credible that we didn't see the logistics problems yet because the supply chain kept us from seeing them. Okay, kind of. But the sales pitch for Lucid at the beginning was, the PDF with the photos of all these people in suits who are like, have all this experience in the auto industry. And even Sandy Monroe described it as like an A team of executives working for Lucid. And, my take is, look at the early days of Apple and Microsoft and Hewlett Packard. They didn't have an A team of executives. They had a couple guys in a garage, right, who just worked hard. The secret to success for a company, like for a startup, is entrepreneurial people who are willing to do whatever it takes, not people who are steeped in the old way of doing things. You're trying to come up with a new way of doing things. But they're bringing in this new team, and there's this moment where he describes this guy, Stephen David, and that all of these executives are now going to report to Stephen David, and Stephen David's going to report to Peter Rawlinson. And it sounds like Stephen David might be taking over a lot of Peter Rawlinson's work. I'm almost wondering, well, what's left for Peter to do?
Collect his stock options. I would like to see some sort of change going on. Whatever's going on for the last year that they've been producing cars is not working. Yeah. So you've got the people who are in there now are the people that set that up. You need some sort of change. Maybe this guy is the new life that they need to correct the course. Maybe he's not. What role he's going to have, I don't know, but we still can't wait a couple of months, or they can't wait a couple of months for that to happen.
Right, well, they gave him a title, but it sounded like a COO role.
Yeah.
It sounded like he's really the chief operating officer, but they didn't give him that title. And I have a lot of friends who are mad at me because I'm so critical of Lucid, and they're Lucid fans. And I was talking to one of them, and he was like, Rawlinson's got to go. He's just like, that's it. Rawlinson's got to get fired. And I think Rawlinson was in, my take is that Rawlinson was at the head of the company because he was the right guy to sell the investment at the beginning. That didn't mean he was the right guy to execute on the factory floor, but he was the right guy to make this. He's the right guy to have the opening of the earnings call. He might not be the right guy to answer the questions on the earnings call, but he's the right guy to do the opening of the earnings call. He's the right guy to make your pitch. when there's no questions. And he did get them through the SPAC merger, and his smooth talking, whatever you want to call it, his credibility, however, whether I didn't buy it, but a large number of people did get them through their SPAC merger, and his bonus was based on really getting them through the SPAC merger. So he did what he was hired to do. And now it seems like they want to transition to having, people who know how to build cars come in and take over. But it wouldn't be a good spin for the company to fire him. So I almost think it makes more sense to like move him into a figurehead position. They'll probably moderate his pay, quietly. Look, you got your 300 million. If you make a stink of this, we're going to fire you. And they'll moderate his pay, and he'll give the opening to the earnings calls. And when the questions come in, Steve and David will take the questions and not Peter, unless they have there's a question right up his wheelhouse, and they've got a prepared answer for that question. Maybe they'll let him talk then. Does that guys? I think firing him. Do you agree with me that firing him might be a bad look for the company?
Oh, it'd definitely be a bad look. I don't think there's any question about that. Right now, everyone's looking at him as the man behind the Lucid Air. Whether if he is or not, I'm sure there's a lot of people involved in it, but he is the face. He has been the voice, and he's got that voice, which is a little hypnotic. And he's actually a good speaker when he knows what he's talking about. If you've ever watched any of his engineering videos where he goes over like how the battery works in a Lucid, very well spoken, very well said. I understood him, which I'm not, someone who would normally, but when you start asking him about things that he doesn't know the answer to,
Well, I think we can give him credit that he was pushing this Lucid Air for a long time, and he had a vision for a great car, and it is a great car. He didn't necessarily have the vision for how to manufacture it at scale. He might not be that guy, but he did have it. It's not the car I want, right? But I can see that this is the kind of car he had a vision for, a particular kind of, he had that Jaguar history, and I think this is a car that fits sort of the Jaguar line of type of customer, maybe the Mercedes S-Class type of customer. He was definitely pitching this as an S-Class replacement, not a EQS replacement, not a Model S replacement, but a Mercedes S-Class was his target. I think he had a vision for what he was going for, and I think they achieved that in terms of limited production, but a vehicle that matches what he was shooting for. So that we can give him credit for. It's just, and thank you, Barry Schwartz, for your support. Ultimately, I don't think he has the vision to carry the company forward on the execution side of things.
I would agree with that.
And I also wonder about Eric Bach. Eric Bach, I forget, is he VP of manufacturing or something like that? Does he get displaced as these moves happen too? Or is he still, because, you get this point of these logistics problems, like, well, who in this company was supposed to make sure this was right and didn't do it? I think it has to fall on Peter, but I wonder if it falls on Eric as well.
It's very possible that might happen. We're just going to have to wait and see, but something needs to happen. There needs to be some sort of changes because somebody really did drop the ball on this. And it can't be pawned off as supply issues, logistics issues, because they're not answering the question. I would be more likely to believe them if they were more direct in their answers.
Okay, so there's this question of their cash pile, and I'll just quickly, I want to address Lucid Air, a comment about the Rivian CEO not being that great either. I don't follow Rivian as closely as I follow Lucid, but I think Rivian delivered a lot more cars. A lot more vehicles, and Rivian did something. One of the biggest mistakes that Lucid made. I don't know if mistake is the right word. One of the choices they made that was most impactful when you contrast it with Rivian is Rivian did an IPO and Lucid did a SPAC merger, and I think it was a mistake that Lucid should have gone ahead and done an IPO as well. Rivian raised $16 billion, which gives them a cash pile that will protect them for 3 or 4 years. Lucid only raised $4 billion out of the SPAC merger, so their cash pile looks like it's only going to hold them until sometime in 2023. So, and I don't think there's any prospect of them getting to positive cash flow before they run out of cash. So Sherry, I forget her last name, the CFO, was talking about different borrowing facilities they're setting up, which makes me worry that you're a financial engineering company rather than an automotive engineering company. But what do you see for Lucid surviving running out of cash next year? Do you think the Saudis are going to invest more? Do they have some other way of getting enough cash to keep operations going? Because they're not going to get positive cash flow till 2023, 5, maybe?
Probably. I think Piff the Magic Dragon is going to be there for that.
PIF the Magic Dragon.
Yeah.
Public Investment Fund for Saudi Arabia, PIF.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I mean, it's going to dilute the company, but I think the Saudis are backing this. The Saudis are smart. And I'm not just saying that because I got the invitation to the embassy. They're smart. They realize that oil is not going to be there forever, and they're going to have a future plan to not turn into a horrible third world country.
Yeah.
So this is what they're investing in, and they're investing. I mean, you've never heard of an electric vehicle factory in Saudi Arabia, of all places. You know, it doesn't seem to mesh, but it does, because it keeps them having an economy. So yeah. I do think there's a lot of money behind these guys, and they're willing to put the money into it to keep it going. I don't know if building a factory in Saudi Arabia right now is the smartest thing. I know that they promised it, but I mean, we're talking about cash flow and how much money do they have in the bank? Well, building a second factory in Saudi Arabia, because they're going to have to do all this logistics stuff all over again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing about building the factory in Saudi Arabia is I think the Saudis are going to lend them the money to build the factory. So building the factory itself, I think, is not a cash issue. It's an operational issue once you built the factory, and it's an operational issue in a sense. In this CapEx phase, you've got to devote some of your professional resources to developing that factory instead of developing the factory you already have.
Yes.
But I can see where it would be hard to say no to the Saudis saying, listen, we're going to lend you $4 billion to build a factory here, and we're going to buy 100,000 cars. It's kind of hard to say no to that opportunity.
Right.
Especially when the same Saudis are two-third majority shareholders of your company, and they tell you to do it anyway.
Yeah, 60%, I believe.
Yeah.
But it just goes back to what you said, and trying to figure all this out at the same time. They can't figure out making out the cars here to times that by 2. And at the same time, you're going to have another section of this factory is going to be open. It's 2.85 million square foot. This new addition on the factory is very, very large.
Yeah.
And they have to fill that up with production equipment, a production line, supposedly the gravity at some point. And it's a lot to take on. And right now they're not handling what they're doing right now.
So let's suppose that this new team comes in and they're able to get their execution better. Where are you hoping they're going to be, let's say, a year from now? If things go well, what do you see as the future before Project Gravity? Because I'm going to ask you about Project Gravity next.
Where do I see them as far as production, stock price? What are we asking?
Yeah, no, I mean, like as they're growing, what's your hope for, let's say, 2023 in terms of the Lucid Air? Do you think they can scale production? Do you think they can get somewhere meaningful?
I'm really hoping that hoping doesn't matter. If they can get past whatever this hump is, I'm pretty sure that they'll be able to produce, I'm going to say probably around 30,000 cars next year, 30 to 35,000. I don't think the other factory is going to be completely ramped up yet. If they can get their existing factory ramped up, they can get to those kind of levels. They need the reservations, because I mean, they have 37,000.
Right.
All right. So I mean, they make another couple thousand cars this year, because I'm still not optimistic that they're going to get that 6,000 to 7,000. They knock those off. They'll have some additional reservations throughout this year and next year. But honestly, I'm still thinking 30,000 cars next year if they can get over whatever this hump is.
Yeah, they have to get their run rate up. Mm-hmm. So if they get through their logistics, and by the end of Q4, if they're producing 500 cars a week, that would be something special, right?
I think that would be good enough.
100 cars a day. 100 cars a day.
Yeah.
You'd be, if you're getting close to 100 cars a day and you do 350 days a year, you got 35,000 vehicles.
Yeah.
That would be, it would be nice to see them achieve that. It seems like a long way away.
It does right now. But we've got blinders on. We can't tell what the problem is, because it was just said, well, there's issues, logistics, supply. Well, I know we can't help, but as investors, it makes you feel better.
Well, it's also, there's a production hell going on that And I've seen Elon talk about this. Maybe I've seen Drew Baglino talk about this, that you're on the factory line and basically you get the factory line going as fast as you can, and then you push it faster and then something breaks. You figure out what stopped the factory line from working, and then you fix that, and then you spool it up again and everything's working, and then you go a little bit faster and then something, and it's like constantly fixing whatever's slowing you down. And then, maybe there's like three things that break, and you got to like address all these. So it's like a constant challenge of addressing problems and getting things better and going faster, and while not screwing quality. It's this massive problem. So I think that what's striking is, these guys all came from the auto industry, and they all have this attitude that, well, this is easy, we've done this before. And for some reason, I don't know if it's something about producing electric vehicles, that there's different components coming in. There's just a totally different manufacturing method. You used to make internal combustion engines, and you just made a whole bunch of them and, slapped them in, and made a whole bunch of transmissions and slapped them in. And, for some reason, it's not coming together the same way. There's something challenging about EVs that makes it harder to put the line together. If that makes any sense. It seems to me it should be easier because there should be fewer parts, but somehow it's harder.
Well, yeah, I agree. It does seem like it should be easier because there are less parts. You've got motors seem to be less complicated. I mean, that just casting an engine block for an ICE vehicle seems like it would be something that's very difficult to do, getting it down to the exact specifications that you need to on.
Right. But they've been doing it for 80 years.
Right.
So they've got that down because they've got so many engineers and staff who are used to building gas engines. Now doing electric motors is just a different thing.
Yeah. So the motor shouldn't be really an issue. Is it just the battery? Or are we actually talking about something that we're talking a quality issue where we're talking panel gaps, or the shapes of fenders are coming out wrong, or the carpet and the glass is not what the expectation that they originally had? I'm not sure, but they've got to figure it out, and they got to be a little bit more outgoing and transparent to the investors, because I know of people who are investors that are willing to withdraw their order on their Lucid.
Yeah.
Because of quality issues that they hear about, and because of that earnings call. I mean, it was not very informative.
Yeah. All right. So going forward, let's talk about something potentially positive. There were a lot of references to Project Gravity, just like everyone's excited about Cybertruck in the Tesla camp. Yeah. I think a lot of people in the Lucid camp are excited about Project Gravity. Peter certainly seems excited about Project Gravity. Sherry seems excited about Project Gravity. I'm nervous. I despite my criticism of Lucid Motors, I do want other EV companies to succeed, because the enemy isn't other EV companies. I'm a Tesla nut.
Yeah.
The other EV companies aren't the enemy. We compete together with EV companies to get rid of internal combustion engines. That's the real goal. But Project Gravity, where do you see, what are your hopes and dreams? What are your expectations for Project Gravity? It sounds like they're going to be announcing it soon to get some reservations in.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately that's going to happen. I got to go to what Elon said, I think earlier this year or late last year. There's going to be no Cybertruck this year. There's going to be no Roadster. There's going to be no Tesla Semi. There's going to be no new product announcements, because we're going to focus on production.
Yeah.
Well, at first I was like, oh, that's a little disappointing. I really wanted to see this $25,000 car. But in retrospect, it's like, well, if you're throwing out all these Cybertruck or some Cybertrucks, and now your Model Y production is going to suffer in Giga Texas, not a good move. So yeah, it does delay things, but are we going to? They threw out that stealth mode. Did you see the Lucid Air stealth?
Yeah.
All right, looks cool. That's great. But you know what? That's not what I want to see right now. Yeah. It's not what I want to see. The Gravity, well, they do have a commitment to show something soon, because that's been promised. But I'm not getting too hyped up about it right now. One, it's going to be very expensive. It's probably going to be out of the range that I would use for my business. So, okay. And plus the fact that it's also going to be the version I would get would be at the end of the line. If there's a Gravity,
the lower end, like the pure version.
Yeah. So that's going to be at the end of the production line, which could be 4 or 5 years from now. at the rate we're going.
Yeah.
So I just want to see a nice little town hall about, hey, we've got this production issue, and this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to fix this, instead of telling us about all these new product releases when we have products that aren't being produced right now.
Yeah, it was striking, by the way, because I went to Cyber Rodeo, the big event they had kicking off the new Gigafactory at Giga Texas, Tesla's factory. And I went to Cyber Roundup, the annual shareholder meeting. And in both cases, we got factory tours. We got to walk around inside the factory. Now, with the Cyber Rodeo, the earlier one, they showed us the layout of what the Model Y 4680 line was going to look like, but it wasn't actually, I don't think they were manufacturing vehicles the way they showed it.
Yeah.
And when we were in for Cyber Roundup, that same area, they were actually making 2170 Model Ys, not 4680 Model Ys. And I don't know if they're producing 4680 Model Ys in a different part of the building, or they've held up production of 4680 Model Ys. They did, by the way, bring forward, Elon just announced that Semi will be delivered this year, not next year.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
we'll
saw
see.
that yesterday.
My hunch is that he's not kidding. And I think they just made the decision. We could start making semis with 4680s, and that might be a bigger need because they can make as many Model Ys as they want, I guess, with 2170s. They have an ample supply of 2170 Model Ys. They're putting off the 4680 Model Y to put those 4680s in semi, which needs them much more.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to see. So my take on Project Gravity is, the first one is going to be close to 200 grand, right? It's going to be an ultra luxury SUV.
Probably.
And, I have a Model X Plaid, which it's a high-end SUV, but it's not, I think like Lucid fans would say it's not luxury.
Right.
Right. But I think it's luxury. I'm more like a Volkswagen Passat guy. So this vehicle is like way too luxurious for me. I would trade it in today for a long range Model 3 if I could, take my profit on the Model X Plaid. But you can't get a Model X, the Model 3 long range in any reasonable time frame.
Right.
So, but I think that's where it's going to start. It's going to start with like a $200,000 crazy high-end version with super acceleration and all that great stuff. And then it'll come down to a pure version that's around $100,000. But it's, they said production first half of 2024. So given their failure to hit timelines before, they'll be lucky to be producing them in 2025. Yeah. So then to get to the pure, you're talking 2026 before they get to the pure version. But I think the theory would be if they're able to get enough interest and they're able to generate reservations, that helps their cash pile. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a high reservation price, but there's sort of balance too. You want it to look like you have a lot of reservations, but you also want to get cash for those reservations.
Mm-hmm.
So do you charge $1,000 reservation price? Do you charge a $3,000 reservation price? It's going to be interesting to see how they balance that.
Yeah, they'll probably set it up very similar to what they have for the Air. The Pure is only a $300 reservation. I'm not sure what the Dream Edition was. It might have been 1,000 or 2,000. There might be some of my viewers that are on there that on the chat that might know off the top of their head, but it was still pretty low. So it is money in the bank, at least
right. It's just I don't know if it's going to generate enough cash to matter, but it doesn't hurt to generate some cash, and it's almost more, let's generate some buzz and show there's demand. And it's the other thing, like they brag about having 37,000 reservations, and from what I can see, Cybertruck has 1.5 million. And for me, 37,000 reservations just doesn't sound like that much. Barry Schwartz says that he thinks the Dream was $5,000 reservation.
Okay.
But my gut is you shouldn't be bragging about 37,000 reservations when Tesla has 1.5 million on Cybertruck alone. And Mach-E is going to deliver 50,000 vehicles this year. So they're on pay. I think they delivered 6,000, 5,000. They delivered 5,000 in July, or close to 5,000 in July. So,
yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
Well, let me take it. Like the last thing I have on my list of things to talk about is there was this reference to a smaller vehicle in the future that, the Lucid Air and the Project Gravity are high-end vehicles that are aimed at sort of the high-end niche of the market. and they want to come out with a mass market vehicle, and probably it's going to be a sedan and an SUV or something, or maybe just I would almost say just do an SUV, a smaller SUV, because that seems to be where the demand is in the marketplace. But it sounds like that's, at one point, I think they said around mid-decade, or, so it didn't sound very promising, like it's coming soon. Did you have a sense of when you think that'll happen?
Years.
Yeah.
If they were on track, I think that they could have had it mid-decade, but right now I wouldn't be looking for that for a while.
Right.
They've got so many things to fix first.
Because my challenge for them is, if they manage to produce 30,000 cars, let's say in 2023, if they're mostly pures, I think they can deliver them all. But if you go back to their SPAC merger documents, their numbers were premised on like an average selling price of like $110,000 a car until 2025. But if the bulk of your orders of your sales are pure, that's a $90,000 or $85,000 car. Mm-hmm. Then your average selling price is going to end up being below 100,000. Your volumes are less, and so the future profits that they project in the SPAC merger are pushed further down the road. It's just, I just feel like there's a huge problem there. There's a huge financial problem that at some point they have to get capital, and maybe the Saudis will just keep pumping money. And I think there's always the danger that the Saudis say enough's enough, or the Saudis could come in and say, you know what, we're just going to buy all the remaining shareholders out.
That is true. That is something that could happen.
Imagine the stock price fell to, it said $18 a share last time I looked. I could see if the share price fell to like $12 or $15, maybe the Saudis would just say, we're just buying the company out. Yeah. Now we don't have to worry about having these quarterly investor calls. We can focus on getting things done. We can ditch Peter quietly. We can ditch a few other people quietly.
Oh yeah, we can run this company as a private company.
What's that?
I wouldn't want the Saudis to ditch me.
Well, I mean, they could just, let you go and quietly.
Yeah, they'll let you go.
You can go up to your Caribbean island and enjoy your $300 million, and we won't say anything. And you don't make us think about you're not getting a special severance package. You probably don't fight the Saudis for a severance package.
Yeah, you don't take them to court and say, we're going to talk about this, young man. I deserve a little bit more for what I did. No, you just go, okay, you're going to let me live? I'm good.
And I think that's, this is a prediction. Okay. My prediction is that sometime, this is not I'm 90% confidence. I think there's like a significant chance that sometime in the next 6 months to a year, the Saudis say, you know what, running this as a public, because you get all these questions, you get you and I talking about this, and we basically cast doubt on the future of the company. That may be having the investor call, having questions answered this way, cast doubt on the future of the company. I don't know that they gain that much. And Elon wanted to take Tesla private because of all the pressure of all this kind of questioning and investors selling short and all this stuff. If the Saudis have to pump more money into the company, why don't they just buy it out?
Maybe they don't want that much control.
They could take it private at 420. Funding secured.
Either they don't want that much control, or they don't want that responsibility.
Yeah. But I think that's a backstop for existing shareholders. Like, I've been a critic of the company. I think it's a poor investment choice. But there's probably a backstop that ultimately the only way out for this is the Saudis. If they have to pump more money, like suppose it turns out we need more cash, right? We're out of cash. Other banks aren't going to lend us money. The Saudis could lend you money, but at some point when the Saudis lend you money, it's going to be like, why are we lending you money? Why don't we just take over?
Right.
And then we're lending ourselves money. And I think the other problem is, do the Saudis think they can run it? Do they trust themselves to run it? Like, if you're the guy running the Saudi investment fund, do you have a guy that you're comfortable putting in charge of this? Do you just put Steve and David in charge of it? How do you incentivize your executives on this company? If you're no longer a publicly traded company, how do you incentivize the executives to deliver on this business? I think there's a challenge there as well.
Yeah, well, there definitely is, and I think that might be one reason why they don't want to run it, and why this is not going to happen for a while.
Okay,
that scenario. I'm not saying I can't happen. It's always a possibility, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I disagree with you, Andre. I think this has been a great conversation. By the way, I've had a lot of great comments in the chat about what a great conversation this has been. Somebody just said something negative and I was like, no, this has been a great conversation. And I've seen a lot of good comments. So, all right, I don't have anything else on my list of topics that I wanted to discuss with you. Is there anything else on your mind about Lucid that we haven't covered that you think needs to be talked about?
Oh God, we've covered quite a bit. My main thing right now, as someone who's an investor and a car enthusiast, get more information out there and stop making us think that we're talking to a car salesman, because that's how I think Peter Rawlinson is coming off at this point. And so that most of that investor meeting sounded like a bunch of car salesmen not answering questions.
All right.
So
okay, so I'm going to wrap it up and stay on for a second, Barry. We'll talk after I end the stream. But just for the audience, please check out in the description below. There should be a link to Barry's channel, Bear's Workshop. You can watch drone flyovers and some other great content. Please check out the Daily Lie, my channel on the Locals platform, warrenrelic.locals.com. Links to that and everything else for me in the description below. Please subscribe to this channel and subscribe to Barry's channel. Your support really helps us. And thank you everyone for watching. I'm going to end the stream, and Barry, we'll keep talking in a second.
All right. Well, I just want to say my thanks to everyone who's watching. I do appreciate you guys watching us for over an hour. I appreciate that, and I appreciate this conversation that Warren and I had.
All right, and thank you to the moderators, Mark Platt in particular.